Oh, blessed love, my family. Yes, I give thanks for your presence with us. And of course, give thanks for all things of right and all things of beauty. We glorify the eternal spirit of truth. We thank the Most High for his presence. We thank the mother of creation for her presence. We give thanks to Negus and Agas, of course, Emperor Haile Selassie I is praising all our doings and sayings. I welcome you into the Tiger's Nest once again, as always, the Honorable Priest Isaac here with you, humble servant at this moment here, just praying and hoping that we can, bring some level of joy to you and insight and meditation and education at this moment. I have a wonderful visitor with me at this moment sitting in the nest, the Tiger's lair, and this is my honorable brother, Dr. Ras Rose. And in a moment, he will be coming forward and we will be having a wonderful reasoning on Pan-African consciousness, race, justice and healing, restorative justice and healing, to be more specific. So obviously, just the depths of the subject area, you could see that there's a lot, that we will have to cover. This sounds like a series. This sounds like a part 1, 2, and 3 because of, the nature of these different aspects. Just Pan-African consciousness alone by itself, and then race, subject alone by itself, that alone is a subject. And then when we talk about justice, restorative justice, and then we're going to talk about healing. Healing is by itself, man. That's a program by itself. So we definitely will see where we go this evening, if this is just an introduction or we can capsulize it here. My good brother, Dr. Ras Rose, representing this evening, because I know, there's so many things you would have done and doing and will do. So the representation would be broad, but this evening here, you are coming under the banner of the Ubuntu movement and Jaja and I initiative. My good brother, blessed love.
Blessed love, my good brother, Right Honorable Priest Isaac. Give thanks for the invite and the opportunity to just reason and share thoughts and action items for ourselves and the family. Give thanks.
Yes, my brother. Before we go into any depths of reasoning, and before I even ask you about the Jaja and I, and of course the Ubuntu movement, tell the audience a little more about who Ras Rose is, the Honorable Dr. Ras Rose is.
Yes, well, give thanks again, my brother. And first, let me greet all in that magnificent, that powerful name, the might of the Trinity, Kadamawi Haile Selassie I, and of course his royal consort, or righteous Haitigi Empress Menina's the mother and father of our inspiration and movement, the Rastafari family. It is indeed I privilege, and so we give thanks again. I am, as I mentioned, Ras Wayne Rose. I have a PhD in African diaspora history, and we hate the term because we don't want to die as poor asses, yes? So diaspora as a term is just one of those created constructs within the fraternity or the convention of history that covers everything outside of African people and everything outside of Africa on this side or within Europe, etc. So the African diaspora is broad. I also specialize in African American history and 20th century US history. I teach at Jackson State University and that virtually for a number of years. And I am a principal in the School of Sacrament, Rastafari University. It's a 2-year construct by Rastafari academics, sharing information on Rastafari livity, Rastafari constructs of ideas, and how I position myself within the future, how I define for ourselves what is necessary for our future and strength. So And also, I'm the former president and chairman of the Universal Development of Rastafari, known as IDOR. It's based here in Washington, D.C. and in Baltimore, Maryland. And so there's much work to do that has been done, and so much more will be accomplished and I will. So that's just a summation of some of the things that we have done and some of the things that we have earned through the grace and mercies of our Father and our own will to do for ourselves. So give thanks, my brother.
That's my good brother. Give thanks for such accomplishments, and we applaud you, and I would like to speak for myself. We appreciate, obviously what has gone into accomplishments, what is being accomplished now, and what we're going to accomplish for the future, because we all individually go through our own rites of passage, but especially those of us who know what we put into the passage we go through and what we've been through and what it takes just to achieve what you achieve. You must have a level of appreciation for those who would have achieved too, even if you didn't read the book as yet. But obviously, they would have had to battle their way in this time, whatever level it would be. Give thanks, my brother. Pan-African consciousness. Would you like to frame that for us? I mean, a person in the audience may say, but please ask what kind of simple question that is. Everybody know what Pan-African is. Everybody will know what consciousness is. So, I mean, that's a no-brainer. But I want to hear from from your perspective, what you consider, Pan-Africanism to be. And just before you come in, because a few evenings ago, we had Dr. Kemet Shockley with us. And he was definitely adamant that the whole construct of definition of what we're going through needs to change. He said, number one, we are in a war. We need to teach our children that we are in a war. They need to understand this is a battle and we have an enemy and there's a winner and a loser. So this is why, as I know that these are serious times. Even when I see we're talking about restorative justice, and of course, people talking about monarchs and burying monarchs. So the time is changing. We are going into different realms. And yes, even the definition of terms and what terms really mean need to come under the microscope. Myself and yourself, we were at a conference the other day, and the word propaganda almost stopped the whole meeting. So I just want to know, from your perspective, Pan-African consciousness, what is it?
Give thanks, Honorable, again. So as the reasoning starts, because, we come at a level of preparation all the time for anything we're doing. But as the reasoning starts, even my own preparation changes, and that's the nature for humanity. So first, let me frame my response in this way. There is a past, present, and necessary future reflection and even definition of what has been labeled as Pan-Africanism. And that consciousness that has been spread in the academic circles about Pan-Africanism as a definition. Obviously, all of us come within our realities or spaces within building blocks that created those spaces. The educational institutions that we've all been part of created, whether on the individual or collective side, created definitions so that they themselves can function. It's like you define something, so you give it a body and a space, like a building, it's a house. You want to live in that house, so you create the things that allows for it to become comfortable and easily defined. And so African people for a very, very long time have been conscious, whether they're on the continent or outside of the continent, and recognizing that there is mutual relations, mutual expectations and benefits that are necessary for at least their survival wherever they are, collectively and individually. So in the past, the term Pan-Africanism, many people credit our beloved brother Blyden Edward Wilmot Blyden, and others credit Alexander Crummell for the term coming to fore. But what happened even in the formation of these terms is the realization of what is impacting our people and what solutions will resolve the negative impacts. So, for instance, when you look at William Blyden, when he travels and opening up his eyes, first from the Caribbean, he comes into the United States, and then other spaces in North America, and then he goes to Africa. And he sees the broad spectrum of the African reality, the very good, the very bad, and everything in between. He sees it and he constructs ideas as to what is necessary to ensure that the bad is subdued by the good, and that energies of development through evolution or revolution takes place. And equally with our beloved Alexander Crummell, getting the ability to study and to improve and to see the world created for him that reality of how and why we need, as a collective of people scattered all over the place, the diaspora, come out here to die as poor people. So, created then this notion that we need to have, because we all have something in common that negates our sovereignty as they saw it. It was necessary then to create or to construct not just the idea, but the vehicles through which our people could come together and define for themselves what they want their future, present and future, to look like. Equally then, as those two were progenitors of this construct of Pan-Africa as an idea and a work, we have the Right Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who again is traveling from Jamaica across the Caribbean and Latin America, and then to North America, also to parts of Europe, seeing the broad spectrum of the challenges and opportunities that are available, but for the unity of our people, the coming together and the laying forward of this vision equally. And sometimes people take this or have strong criticisms for this man, but there's a conversation to be had at some point too. W.E.B. Du Bois, travel, gaining a clarity of himself and what the reality of the people of African ascendancy is, and having traveled and seen the possibilities of how it is done and how it can be done, and then framing for ourselves what mechanisms need to put in place. So first you have to come together, you have to have the conversations, you have to lay forward a plan and a structure, and then you have to develop programs and policies within those structures to ensure that something sustainable can take place. So Pan-African or Pan-African consciousness then comes from the, excuse the term again, those among us, and you could call them the talented 1%, the talented 10, or the bright, inspired ones among us who have traveled and have engaged platforms, not dissimilar to your own work, where you have created a platform to share information, to share knowledge, and to broaden the scope of the how our people get things done. And it is within that framework. Yes, it was not YouTube or Facebook or other social medias, but they used the media available at the time. So all of these people wrote, published, and promoted the vision that they saw for our people. And through the writings of the Right Honorable Marcus Garvey, through the writings of Edward Blyden, through the writings of Alexander Crummell, through the writings of W.E.B. Du Bois and others, we get engaged in what challenged them then, how those challenges are permeated across our current reality. And if we just take the time to really interrogate and then act on a few of the suggestions that are made by these noble ancestors of ours, we could stand in the space of our own clarity that leads us to justice and healing, which is the other or the end products of our consciousness. So our Pan-African consciousness today, remember, it's speaking of what it defines is the things I and I have in common, the things that I and I share in common, and the need for those commonalities to come within a structure that leads to our unity, leads to our self-empowerment, our sovereignty. And it is, of course, other people, you have Pan-Asian consciousness and you have other different kinds of consciousness. The European Union has come together. CARICOM said they come together. It's a kind of consciousness, recognizing the similarities that people have, and then empowering through institutions, resolutions to challenges and collaborations with the progress that is happening in one space that can benefit the other. Those are the basic ingredients of our Pan-African consciousness, where you see brothers, sisters in different spaces across the Western Hemisphere, especially first, and knowing the common history and experiential past that we all faced, saying to each other, let us come together and do one thing. As the Right Honorable Marcus Garvey did many things, but some of the standouts were the establishments of business, the establishment of the shipping maritime initiative that he started, the necessity of standing tall as man and woman, therefore defining your God self, defining your sovereign being and the right of that being to be where you want to be. Acting in those ways motivates and inspires, and then people gravitate to. And if you are a good leader, then people, if it is your destiny and your will to lead, then you will have those people of like-mindedness to come together and to not just be led, but to share their own divine work and inspiration, so the collaborative or the collaborations can be wholesome. So Pan-Africanism is no different. I don't come to, even as I can, give all the definitions and go into the history of who did what and who said what, and it's all constructions of humanity, our humanity. The good thing about the titles, like Pan-Africanism, comes out of our bowels. It's our vernacular. I and I created it, our people, both from the Caribbean and in the North American and the African spaces. Our people decided and coined that term. That is a term that morphed incidentally from Ethiopianism, which again, it's our people who did the work. And the framework of these things, including Pan-Africa, but less so, comes from a spirituality defined in a non-African space, right? So let me say that it comes from a spirituality that is defined within a non-African space. So because we're not in Africa,
yes,
right, we had to find a way to reconnect ourselves to a base that we have no clue about. It's just inside of us and we're not even sure. So you could imagine those early progenitors of Ethiopianism as they are looking within the religious framework to define their spiritual and physical existence. And so they look toward Ethiopia, the god of Ethiopia, they look towards Africa. Yes? But they're still in a Christian dogma, a Christian orientation. And so they defined and designed a construction that clarifies for them what that current reality is. Yes? And what they did then is to, start movements, churches that now pegged their spiritual reality and destiny to Africa and Ethiopia.
definitely.
But it's still within the construct of something that they're socialized in from the West. Now, as that morphed and produces clarified thought within the academic circles, people define then that this is Pan-African or Pan-Africanism. And what they did is to leave out the religiosity of Ethiopia.
Okay.
Yes, and now look for economics, look towards the social structures of people in different cultures and cultural spaces. When we talk about culture, we're talking about language and ethos, the way people live and act. So based on those things you're saying now, those people are early Pan-African actors started looking at economics and looking at the sociology of our people and to define and engage conversations on how that becomes real and beneficial. Because as you're very much aware, yourself being not just a historian, but an historian of note, because you're reading and activating the knowledge that you have, you'll know that all cultures have faced enslavement at some point. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore have had to engage in ways to liberate themselves. Some of it becomes inadvertent, and it also becomes through or comes through collaboration. So when you have like-minded people, like-minded cultural experiences, like-minded historical experiences, then you can at least come together and engage solutions to challenges that you face on the common spectrum of your reality. For African people, because we're scattered so far and so wide, it has remained a challenge. But of course, everyone would know the 1900 conference that took place in England, where this notion of the problem of the 20th century being the problem of the color line, and Du Bois delivered that. And that is long, that is long before we have our Honorable Marcus Garvey stepping into that space and then running with the baton in ways that just still confounds all of us. The energy and the work and the discipline and the vision, right? But it is, Du Bois had the opportunity simply because of what was taking place at the time and how, you're talking about post 1896, where Ethiopia has now defeated Italy. You're talking about an era where Europe is uniting itself after 100 years war, shortly after they've done war for a century between each other. They're coming together. You're talking about a period of time now where the scramble for Africa has been engaged, and people are going in and dissecting a continent and the people and its resources and sharing it among themselves. So it was an opportunity for people who are thoughtful, who have the mental organizational structure to come together and to examine what it is that we have done in the past, what is our current possibilities, and then how do we engage that. That is what took place over 100 years ago. And our people were very deliberate. The historical record speaks to laying out a comprehensive Pan-African plan with objectives and goals and engagement. And by the time you go into the end of the first third of the 20th century, so by 1930, when His Majesty steps and ascends to the throne of Ethiopia supremacy, a whole spectrum of work has already been done to accommodate and facilitate him being Emperor of Ethiopia. Ethiopia representing Black, and this is not me saying that. This is what Du Bois said. Yes, the reason why Emperor Haile Selassie took the term, or the reason why Rastafari took the name Emperor of Ethiopia and not Abyssinia as his predecessors, is because Ethiopia is Black and Abyssinia represents a mixed race. Yes, so it was a clear pronunciation in his action when he engaged the title Emperor of Ethiopia, but it's also based on a foundation set by people like Blyden and others internationally to engage the Black world in a Pan-African consciousness. So the baton is being moved and shared and passed forward from generation to generation. And what has happened really in the last 100 years has been a reformatting, if you will, of our revolutionary mind, where here in the rise of American world supremacy or dominance, you find a consumer-driven, materialism-driven focus that our world has taken on. And whether we say we Pan-African or we Rasta or whatever titles and identification that are used by us, we are all victims, if not just mere consumers of Western materialism. And it has consumed us in ways that has shifted our focus from the Pan-African agenda, from the wholesomeness of that agenda, meaning the liberation of our minds, our bodies, certainly our economics. And so what we get is we get trapped on a treadmill, running, a treadmill going at about 60 miles an hour, and we're on it running fast. But when we recognize, we're now recognizing in reality, we're running on a treadmill going nowhere. It is taking us nowhere. Yes, we have the physical prowess to do anything because we've been running on a treadmill. You're getting fit, but you're fit for nothing because you're going nowhere on that treadmill. Yes? And so it is time now for that reflection on justice, because equally, when you're running on a treadmill, yeah, you're engaging muscles and parts of your body that really, after a while, get stressed. So just if we should just look at stress as a singular component of trauma, and when your body is stressed, everything else crashes. You have no use for your family, for your resources, it don't matter. You're stressed. Your body is stressed. So our people have become stressed by this treadmill effect that we have been engaging for nearly 100 years now, where materialism becomes our focus, where after the 1950s, especially in the American spaces, people no longer have an interest in Ethiopia. People no longer have an interest, a particular interest and admiration as they did in the past for our clarity as we define ourselves. And so we constantly have to be redefining ourselves. And so you have the rise of the Rastafari movement as a definition again of our sovereignty and our kingship, our Africanness, our African self, because we had to again peg ourselves to a Pan-African reality because we're losing it. Because everyone who is conscious now is still, the conscious people are dying their hair blonde and purple. That is the level of consciousness we're engaged in. They talk well, they're bright, and they perhaps mean well. But the socialization has taken people away from even a love of their own image. And so they have to recreate something that makes them look a certain way. So the fact is, Pan-Africa today is calling for a definition within the construct of personal or restorative justice and healing. Because when we're just, we're not talking about justice now where the system owes you something and you have to go claim it. That is justice also that we will pursue and get. But you cannot get that justice, in fact, if you are unjust to yourself. And so it first requires us, and this is what you alluded to earlier, Honorable Priest Isaac, is that I and I came together in St. Lucia intentionally to say, listen, we need justice and healing. And first, it begins with I and I. That is what Ubuntu represents. I am because you are, and you are because I am. Let us then examine the ways in which we have divested our positive energy from self-development, from self-identity, and our sovereign need to represent our next and our new, the stopping of the buy-in to someone else's agenda, and let us really unpack who I and I are, what is our current mission, where we're going, and how we get there. That is the whole framing for Pan-Africa today. It's called justice and healing. I am suggesting that then You know, our Pan-African reality moves us away from the academic constructions, move us away from all the talk, and it is activated in meaningful ways where people can touch the result and say, yes, man, I remember when this occurred. I was part of this, and this is where it has taken us. That's taken us to economic liberation. That's taken us to developing programs that impacts our life, our reality, and our past goodness, and builds on that into a present and future greatness. Yes. So this is the sum total, my brother. And
yes,
yes, sir. So blessed Lord.
Yeah, positive. I definitely I take in the whole treadmill analogy that you put out there, because one thing about the treadmill, it does make you strong. It builds your muscles. You know, it comes to me like somewhat like, you know, the higher education system that we have. We have more engineers amongst us now. We have doctors, we have scientists, chemists, but yet still we can't do nothing for our people with all the knowledge we have. As you said, Marcus Garvey, I wonder how much cellular phone he had in that little knapsack he walked with. You know what I mean? If he had 5G, I think they had 2G back then. I don't know if he was on Facebook, how many likes he got a daytime. You know, but the point is that he didn't have none of these mobilities at his disposal, but yet still he's doing what nobody can do up to now as a group or by themselves, with so many connections, with with LinkedIn, with Facebook, with Instagram, with a whole email list of people, but yet still we cannot even put several ships on the water. We cannot buy land in Liberia and start a rubber plantation so we can make some tires, you know, and all of these things that Marcus Mosiah Garvey was doing. So it just brought me that's what came to mind when you were speaking about the treadmill. Because again, just adding to, you know, the flavor you put there, the treadmill does make you strong. And we will admit, most of us, that some of us would have gone to some of the most esteemed colleges and universities and have the paper on the wall to prove it. But yet still, can we come together and even buy a plane? We're on the treadmill. We are getting strong. And after a while, as you said, tension and stress will come, which we also see that coming through. So that was a very beautiful analogy. Just admiring it and adding to it just for clarity.
Yes,
I see in your reasoning though, and I give thanks for that. You went straight to justice and healing, and we kind of went over race. I want to put race in a context here. Not really in the context maybe some would put it. Now, in the title that, because let me just let the public know, the title of the whole conversation was given to me by you.
Yes, ma'am.
Pan-African Consciousness, Race, Restorative Justice, and Healing. Dovetailing from what you just said, because we don't piggyback around. Dovetailing from what you were saying a moment ago. And I hope the audience would have really analyzed the chronology that you were putting down in the diaspora. You know, you call some stalwarts in this thing here from Blyden, and give thanks to Honorable Priest Blyden, who would have become an ancestor a few years ago. He is a descendant from the Honorable Blyden there. And you also mentioned Du Bois, and of course that Pan-African conference in London. It was in the early 1900 itself. And also, just somewhat summarizing what you said and recapping, that even just prior to that was the Battle of Adwa, which was a great inspiration for that. So the inspiration of the Battle of Adwa went across Africa, because we're dealing with Africa. I'm getting to a key point here with race. We're dealing with Africa, and we're dealing with the diaspora. Now, what is interesting in the African context, my good brother, as you just said, Haile Selassie utilized the term Ethiopia to be closer to blackness than Abyssinia. But then now you would notice that the Organization of African Unity, because in your reasoning, well, I know it's just time, but you didn't really get time to touch upon the African leaders now, who are seen as stalwarts of Pan-Africanism as well. Of course, everyone would think of Kwame Nkrumah, who was inspired by these same stalwarts, not just Garvey alone, but everyone that you spoke of prior. But what I'm saying, my good brother, when Kwame Nkrumah and the West linked up with Haile Selassie and the East, and they brought together this Organization of African Unity, that is also seen as Pan-Africanism as well, maybe on a geopolitical level. But now when it comes to the aspect of race now, Egypt as we know it today, it's not even called Egypt, it's actually known as the Arab Republic of Egypt. That's its actual name. Do you know that that became an independent country before Ghana? Most of us do not know that. I think it was 1922.
In the first third of the 20th century.
Yes, right. But psychologically, we are so removed from the Africa north of the Sahara Desert. So this sub-Sahara Africa thing, that's what we are, we ain't Africans, we're sub-Sahara Africans. So we don't talk too much about Algeria and Tunisia and Libya and Morocco as if this belonged to somebody else. You just stick to sub-Saharan Africa, to the point that if you ask even some of our greatest scholars, which country in Africa got its independence first, we would say Ghana, because psychologically we're locked into sub-Saharan Africa. Now, the reason why I brought this into the picture, because race is a broad thing, and I would want to get from you now, what aspect of race are you talking of, especially when it comes to Pan-Africanism, which is not just diaspora now, like we can say, well, a conscious black man shouldn't be marrying a white woman or that kind of talk. But when we get to the geopolitical aspect of it now, and we're dealing government to government, and a white person in South Africa can look at you and tell you, oh, yes, I'm an African. I was born here, second generation, and, you just got to shrug your shoulders. Where does the race, I know that has to do with the justice part of it too, but with the concept of race now, especially with the continent, linking with the diaspora, what is the outlook of the Ubuntu and the Jaja and I movement when it comes to the aspect of race in the fullness, in the holistic aspect of it? Just keeping in mind all that I put on the table.
And I put a lot on the table, but let me first respond with this, as I would have and still will engage. Pan-Africa or Pan-Africanism has different components in mind.
Exactly. That's it. That's what I'm saying, basically.
And one of the components, it's really both spatial and epoch, if you will. So between the late 1800s all the way up to the 1950s, early 1950s, late 1940s, early 1950s, is one epoch or era of Pan-Africa, and that was engaged primarily by people from our region, like the what is called the Caribbean. I hate that term, or the West Indies. I don't even use that term.
I hear you.
Right? But that is where you have leadership coming in again. Blyden, Garvey, of course, Atlee Rogers. I mean, Edward and others who are focused on the religiosity of spaces, but also the empowerment of bodies and minds and economies. Yes, and they ran with that baton all the way up until the 5th Pan-African Congress. Yes, this was now taking place, I think, in Manchester, England, and being led primarily by two powerful, and this is something we need to talk and expand on. It. I started a lecture series on it already, just looking at the Garvey wives. Yes, but this component of Pan-Africa is led and concluded by, let us just leave three people on the table: W.E.B. Du Bois, Amy Ashwood, and Amy Jakes Garvey. It is by their reaching into the brother responding positively, and then their network, Amy Ashwood and Amy Jakes' network across Europe, and especially in England, that allowed for that conference to take place. And at that conference, based on, again, the network already created by these two powerful sisters, Garveys, these are Garvey, the very spirit of Garvey, the very spirit. This is a man who united with these two women to bring a singular unit. Yes, so it's still Garvey, that energy of Garvey pushing the envelope and pushing the button into the hands of a Kwame Nkrumah, into the hands of the Kenyan president Jomo Kenyatta, into the hands of Aziz, right, and others right there in England, because these big states in Africa that speak English, all of these bright young brothers were in England studying, preparing themselves in the academic and social structures that allows for physical infrastructures to manifest. So these were very privileged brothers, by the way. Remember that. Yes, coming out of Africa with brilliant minds, going into Europe to study, but then to engage conversations. Amy Ashwood had a space where all of these bright minds would converge. It was like a club, and they would come together, and they're talking, they're planning, they're organizing. But it is through those networks that the baton of Pan-Africanism shifted from North America and the Caribbean and was engaged by Africa.
I get that.
In reality, meaning, here is your baton, run with it now. And of course, this is how we get to a Kwame Nkrumah becoming such a larger-than-life figure, simply because the ideas that he puts together, both from and by the way, Kwame Nkrumah engaged both Marcus Garvey, Honorable Marcus Garvey, and W.E.B. Du Bois in his academic preparations. And in his physical socialization, he engaged Du Bois quite a bit, to the point where it is he who invited W.E.B. Du Bois to Ghana, established a significant household with a chauffeur and preparations for him to do the work that he started from as early as 1906, where he was trying to put together an encyclopedia, of an Africana encyclopedia of all the African greats, their accomplishments, their culture, work, and how to prepare our people from the West who are now in this poor state of being to come home or to be engaged on those platforms. So we have that as a component of the Pan-Africa evolution that takes from the inception and the work and the inspiration coming out of Africa. And remember, our people, Blyden and others, are looking to Africa. That's what our right honorable Marcus Garvey says. Look, didn't say Africa, but he said the East. But he was always African-centered in his thoughts, actions, and reality. So we're looking to Africa for inspiration, but then Africa came, as the family would do, comes within to the table and say, boy, you really inspire my child.
Yep.
Yes, and let me run now with this and engage the politics of governance through the same construction. So Kwame Nkrumah was unapologetic about the African mind, engaged for the African sovereign self, engaged for the African economic development. And it is the Garvey model that so many people still are gravitating to. I know you asked about race, I'm not divesting from that. But
no, you're honest to be.
What then becomes critical to understand, even when we speak the rhetoric of liberation, when we speak the rhetoric of war, we have to recognize that that is not a rhetoric for other people.
Mm.
And especially, let us say, the other side with whom we would be at war, it's not rhetorical for them. It's an active engagement with subversion and constant strategic innovations to ensure that they win that battle. From most accounts, they're doing very well on the battlefield, because it is now ourselves who have become the enemy of I. Yes, let's check that out.
Friendly fire.
Enemy of I. So we now have people, both in our governmental structures, in our civic organizations, etc., who are the gatekeepers on the battlefield for the victory of the enemy of good. And so you will find our people mourning the loss of people they have no relationship to, and people who have been directly involved in their physical, economic, and spiritual demise. And we will cry for these people. We will take time and put on our best garbs just to engage the space where those people are. And mind you, diplomacy, when you have that diplomatic responsibility, then you act in that in a responsible way. So if you're a head of state, or as in the case of my family, my Bobo Shanti family, you have ambassadors and cheer people who are doing different work. And if you're engaged in a space where you had to go to a particular engagement that the Queen or someone else representing a head of state is that, you go with your dignity and you stand tall. Yes, but to weep and mourn, the symbol of your oppression, is a different thing. And I'm not saying what people should do about the passing of their queen, if it's their queen. I really don't care. All I'm saying is that what has happened to our people is that we become the gatekeepers of the oppressive system, and we defend it. We defend it with vim and vigor. So even, and I say this from experience, Honorable, because I've had communications on platforms where 90% of the people on are white, and our delivery is such that they get it and they support and they say yes, and one and two people object to it.
Blacker than you.
Look, yes, and you're saying, oh my goodness, but what is it that would make you believe that the people who have wronged you, who are now prepared to say yes, but you're right, we have done some wrong? Why do you think that you know more about their wrong than they do? And it's our people. So that is where our challenge lies. Our challenge is not in race. That's another construction within both a social ethos and an economic reality. Yes? So what we have, His Majesty spoke of Ethiopia as a race, and he's one of the only people that I see in his writing, volume 1 of his
autobiography.
Yes, his autobiography, My Life and Ethiopia's Progress.
Yes.
He speaks of what happens in the First World War. I mean, not the First World War, in the Second World War, but the leading up. So Ethiopia is the first victim of the World War.
Yes.
Right? And he speaks of the attempts at Italy to wipe out the Ethiopian race.
It's true. Yeah.
And so when you see that the extraction then to his own diplomatic work in taking on Ethiopia as the construction of blackness is very clear, because he's saying, when I say Ethiopia, I'm saying black. Right? So we have multiple spectrums in the black reality. Yes? So the racial constructions are only utilized in our spaces simply because it helps with a conversation. Yes? But when the conversation is between academics, when it's between I and I, we don't even engage. We don't engage race when it's between I and I, because what are we talking about? Because most engagements, most conversations on race are conflicts. They're centered on conflicts. Who did what, and why, and how, and all of that. So when I is speaking in the context of our own trauma, past, we look at Europe and what they've done, and present, many people still look at Europe and the foothold that they have on the necks of African economies and African peoples internationally. Yes? So we talk in that context, but we're not defining race in that context. But when we're talking to Europeans about this, or we're talking in certain academic circles about this, then you have to be very specific about what happened, the motivations, and therefore the recompense, if not restitution or restorative processes that are necessary to resolve those things in the human family. Yes? So race engages different spaces, different times, and different overstanding, and it cannot and should not be used in the broad swath kind of engagement that sometimes are loosely done, especially in the place that people become very emotional. And our people, we're very emotional people, and it's not all bad.
No, in motion.
Yes. Right? In motion, right? Give thanks.
Alive.
Also, what happens is that we share conversations that inspires people without formulations of use of tool, if you will. So war. And I respect my family and those who overstand that we're at war. Yes? And if those overstanding leads us to establish the military academy that allows for us to engage the training of the mind and the discipline that allows us to move forward in the warfare, the strategic warfare that allows us to disengage our trauma, disengage our victimization and stand as victors, then I'm on that. But let us not fool ourselves. There was a reason why Pan-Africa emerged through Ethiopianism, a spiritual. Yes, a spiritual engagement, because we don't, for instance, if we want a physical engagement, even if we clamored for it, at best, we might be able to get a few ways, a few, things that can give you a little effect, but not the effect that ends our trauma. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm saying in the physical warfare, we talk about warfare. If you don't further say how that war is engaged and through what mechanisms, then we're doing a disservice to ourselves. Yes. So say warfare, and the first thing that comes to mind is armament. What is your armament then, since you are at war? And how do you use that armament to win the battle? Critical questions. And in fact, these are not new questions. This is why so many people in the academic circles have written about conflict between the Right Honorable Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois. Yes? Because on the one hand, the Honorable Marcus Garvey is inspiring the energy toward one's moving in the space for economic and social and political liberation. But people are hearing the rhetoric of Right Honorable Marcus Garvey, excited about it, but then calling for the types of warfare that they themselves are not ready for.
I hear you. Yeah.
And these are truths and facts. I have read documents upon documents where people say, yes, let us put a military army together. And who is going to arm you? Ethiopia faced that at Adwa, where hadn't it been for the intentions of Italy to engage domination over Ethiopia by friending Menelik. So long before Menelik became emperor, he's befriended by Italy. He's courted by Italy because he's a strong man. He's the king of Showa, and he's doing powerful things. And they knew that he had designs on the throne of Ethiopia. So they befriended him, they armed him, because that's the way the feudal structure worked at the time. And they armed him well. Hadn't they armed him, when they engaged him at the Battle of Adwa, he would not have anything to fight them with. And mind you, he still didn't have the quality
that they had
of equipment for warfare that they had. What he had was the strategy, and he had the great Empress Taiwutu with him. Yes, who was a strategist, both militarily and intellectually. Yes, and was able to design something that really give those people the whooping they deserve. So we have to be very mindful when we talk about warfare. By the way, my initial spells it. If you see that W and that R, those are the bookends. There's an A in between. So I speak from, yes, I speak from the authority of being a warrior from birth, even by naming. But our warfare has to be strategic, and it has to be defined, so that we know the battlefields and we know the rules of engagement, so that when we bring young people into the space of engaging, or of engagement, they are clarified what they're doing. When you can say to young people, shift your focus from self-inflicted wounds and injuries, yes, and prepare yourself in a way that allows you to advance in the economic battle, because there is an economic battle. And that economic battle does not have a color. Just overstand that, It has a system. And all of us are engaged in the system. And most of us are engaged on the wrong side of that economic battle, because we're feeding our resources, our financial resources, into the beast that oppresses us. That is real warfare. And all we're doing, we're strengthening the beast by buying and consuming the things that we're not supposed to consume, by engaging their constructions of what holidays look like, and spending our monies, wasting ourselves, and socializing our young people now to expect a gift every 2 to 3 weeks or a month or so, things that they cannot even focus on, because they're focused on this some little equipment in their hand. But we buy them all these things because someone says it's Christmas, or it's Thanksgiving, or it's whatever new one they're going to create soon. Yes. So the warfare, we have to be very clear. Right now, the warfare, Honorable, for I, within the construct of justice and healing, it's personal. The enemy is very personal right now for I. And it starts with I. Cleansing from my own thoughts and sharing a process of how that can be done. Sharing a space of how that can be done with our people who are prepared to engage in that cleansing process of stop doing the things that we have become so socialized to do, that is antithetical to our own sovereign reality and existence, and a future that is beautifully African and designed for our survival and thriving. We have to, that is the conflict right now. And that is not going to be engaged in any easy way, because the socializations of which we have been engaged for the past 100 years, it's a beast. That's why our good book, whether a man want to burn it or not, I use it all the time. Matthew 24 tells me very clearly some things that says, except the days be shortened, the very elect could not be saved. And I don't take that into eschatological kind of construct where everything ends. I'm talking about the fact that in this battle, in this warfare, if things don't really come to a bomb quickly, we're going to be wiped out in our sovereign God says. We're going to be gone. As Franz Fanon says, we're really going to become white people with black faces. Right? Because that is our ultimate destiny if we don't stop that treadmill. If we don't jump off that treadmill and say, hold on a second, my legs are strong, but my heart is strong. But my head is weak, is light. Yes, I have no focus. All these things are coming at me and I don't know what to do. Because people are now dictating what you do. You turn on your phone, my goodness, and immediately something pops up based on the last search that you did. Tell you that you need a driveway fixed. Or you need this car because you were just glossing over it.
Yeah, man, it's true.
Or this is what your friends are doing. So we have now become, and remember, this is the start of the new battlefield that these people have developed. And remember, when I'm saying these people, I'm speaking of a system, and our topic is race. Because I'm showing you how unimportant that becomes in the broad spectrum of things. Because while there's malice directed at our people because of how we look, you have had people as dark as I coming into America, and in their passport it says white. No, I'm true. It's true. If you're a black Arab, yes, your racial construction based on the document they give you is going to say you're white.
You're white, yeah.
All right. So it then tells you that this thing of race is just something arbitrary nonsense.
Game.
Right? It is a serious game. Now remember, Pan-Africa engages us because we have an experiential past that speaks of Africa. And therefore, based on all the dynamics of Africa, we're trying to find the common things we can do and work on that takes us to economic and political, if not spiritual liberation. That's Pan-Africa. This thing of race then is something Pan-Africans engage in, but it has some completely different components that is going to mesmerize us and confound us. Literally confound us.
It really will.
Yeah, so yeah, man, it's for I then, just to conclude sound on race, it's a non-issue. It's a non-issue for our people. We are the first in the human family. The mitochondrial DNA that connects all humanity according to the scientists, and we accept the science because science is always as good as the moment you're in. It may change 50, 100 years from now, some new things. But based on our scientific reality and also our spiritual consciousness and the physical spaces from which we have emerged, those things give me a strong conclusion to say Ethiopia, blackness, is the foundation on which everything emerges from. So as we say in the beginning, darkness was on the face of the deep. So if you want to equate darkness and blackness together, then it's I who stood on the face of the deep, and out of I came everything else. And out of I, and within I, everything must return. Yes, so the problem, as I said, is warfare. When you talk of warfare, let us talk about what the strategy is. If the strategy is economics, we need to extract economic resources. We need to stop pumping our energies into a beast that is killing us, creating foods that are poisonous to us, creating medicines and policies surrounding medicines that is antithetical to our sovereign being and our knowledge of self and the way we want to live our lives, creating educational systems that excludes a narrative of our greatness, our goodness, and therefore our possibilities for the future.
Of course.
All these things are the warfares that we are engaged in. So unless we're strategic in saying, all right, I am an educator, and therefore in this battle, and I've done this, and so if they all want to fire me after this, is up to them, it's fine. But when I go into a classroom to teach, in the first month or so, I give the student everything they need from the book, everything. That's what the book says. Get that solid. Now let us really talk about what you need to do for the next 2.5 months. Since you're the next generation, I'm just preparing you for something. Overstand the space you're in. And many times my students are also of multi-ethnic, multiracial, and multinational spaces. And I'm saying, it don't matter what you look like. It's your world. And you have to be clear as to who your enemy is. Is this brother sitting beside your enemy? But you're going to be the policymaker of tomorrow. Are you going to make sure that he's incarcerated simply because of his lack of economic opportunities? Are you going to overstand and the past and the current challenges, and then be empathetic, if not, strategic in how you design, how you lift people with yourself. I mean, teaching and giving strategies to young people so that they say, oh, okay. And most of my class, at the end of the class, 15, 20 minutes, students are still there asking questions, trying to get some next steps. And that is what you want as a strategy. Because we fight not only against flesh and blood, my goodness, those are symbolism of a system. Yes, the flesh and blood are just the gatekeepers of a system. It's how do you strategically dismantle the system without lifting a gun. But having the gun just in case you need some protection. That is your right. It's your, I mean, where I grew up or got educated, they have a Second Amendment. Yes? That says you have the right to do something.
Yeah.
And that is part of, you see, that component of the battlefield. If, for instance, people speak of that and people are very passionate about that, then where are the institutions that would train the Black bodies for at least self-defense or family protection? We have our churches and our schools telling young people, don't touch it, my God, Jesus Christ, the boy take a gun. No, if someone takes a gun, it means he might be interested in it. Get him the training. Get her the training.
For somebody coming in the same church or the same school to deal with that.
But that is the reality we see in North America. Where the church, where it's designed to speak of your spiritual existence and your soul, that component of you that people talk so well about, and I love some of the work you do in that space. But people want to demise or destroy your physical existence simply because they don't believe you have a soul. And you're in a space of spiritual enlightenment or worship where you're trying to do the right thing, and someone gonna come snuff out your life, and you don't have the means of defending that life simply because you have been socialized to look at weapons of protection as weapons of destruction based on what somebody tell you. Based on
somebody that using it on you.
Yes, and the fear that they have. I mean, if you look at American history and people of African ascendancy and use of guns in America, you overstand it has been a battle just for once to even engage the Second Amendment. And our people are still being told by family members, good people, good intentioned people, to stay away instead of saying, let us engage, let us train you, let us have you organize. If that's your inclination, for instance, you look at a young prince or princess and you say, so what you want to do for your future? What kind of career you want? And if someone say police or soldier, we taught them out of it for the most part.
Yeah, but they can still be a soldier for us.
Yes, we should. When someone say that to you, then you should be saying, wow, give thanks. We have another soldier.
Yes.
You understand? And then you give that soldier, because it's a mindset, Every sovereign nation requires protection. It requires the infrastructure of security. What is our infrastructure of security? We're calling on the police, and mind you, there's some good police. I know quite a few of them. But we're calling on people who have been socialized by a system to incarcerate us, to beat us, and to treat us as criminals. And many times when you call them, and if you're a little, belligerent because you're facing a little trauma, they tell you to shut your mouth. And if a man tells you to shut your mouth in your own house, you might want to respond. And if you respond, he might thump you in your mouth and arrest you. And as you call him, that is the folly, the craziness of our engaging our security forces. So we need to, at least when we're talking about strategic engagement for community development and sovereignty and a battlefield, we need to be engaging our young minds to say, okay, if you're inclined toward this career path, then here's an institution that you can be engaged in that gives you the discipline, gives you the organization, gives you a mission, and the wherewithal where you can execute and accomplish. That is what we have to talk about. Otherwise, we're wasting breath, we're wasting air, and we're wasting time.
Yes, King. Yes, my good brother. Yeah, the time moving fast and us such a deep reasoning here. But as I said, I know we're not gonna cover all what we need because this is a work in progress. And this is not entertainment, it's a work in progress. So people have to understand that as the plant is growing, we're growing, and we have to come back again and get water. But before we seal up here,
Yes, Father.
before we seal up, I want us to just touch, even if it's quickly, the restorative justice aspect. That healing part, well, at least the way I look at it, it is so deep. Yeah, because we're seriously wounded. So I think even when we come again, we might just have to deal with healing alone for that program there. But if you could just, with the events of the last week and a half to 2 weeks and the death of the previous monarch of Great Britain and a new monarch being announced and established, the third of the Charles. And although you already made it clear that when we speak of justice, it's not necessarily looking for something that somebody already stole from you. Okay, we understand that, but you clearly said, but that's a part of it. That is, those diamonds in the crown do belong to me. Fair enough. But it's not just about that alone. But on that level, though, when it comes to reparation and compensation and these things, what most people understand. And if you want to touch upon the other level of restorative justice, which I believe is closer to healing, please feel free to. But as it relates to that aspect that most of us lean to, reparation, recompense, compensation, and recompensing us, really. And in relation to the death of Queen Elizabeth II and the time we're in and the monarchy continuing, etc., etc. How do you see that fitting in, her death, burial, with that restorative justice that we've been crying for some time?
Give thanks, Honorable Priest Isaac. You know, when we called for the justice and healing initiative, when we called for it, we said some things and people laughed. And remember, everything that happens post our event, post those 28 days of coming together in spiritual rituals and cultural educational activities, everything post that is subject to my claiming as a victory. I and I, as a people who came together for a restorative justice process. Yes? So early in the process, we said the symbols and individuals of our oppression must be removed. That is part of what we're calling on the ancestors to ensure happens. Yes? So when we say Naya Bingi, we were saying a cessation of the activities and a removal of the symbols of those activities that oppresses our people. But now let's move upon that, because everybody see what happens days after, a couple of weeks after, but immediately thereafter, we're seeing symbols removed. Yes? Because there has to be the beginning and continuation of a process that allows us to go to the next and the new. After 70 years of reigning over economic, political, and spiritual institutions that were designed and continued to oppress our people and to bring our people to the lowest ebb of humanity, that symbol in the embodiment of the person who transitioned. And you see, I accept the African principle of not calling the names of those who you don't want to resurrect. So I no longer call the names of those who I don't want to resurrect and their processes of oppression. But we know the passing that took place. And so we're saying, what I'm saying is that we called for an end to that structure, to that system, not just that singular system or that individual. We're saying all. And we have to be careful then. And this is where my pivot is important, Honorable. Because if we stand in the way of our own people's liberation, we'll be moved. That is the warning we have to overstand. Because the Nyabingi calls for a cessation, the death of, the ending of those processes that have been engaged in our oppression. So if we're feeding into that system, if we are contributors to that system, we have to be very mindful. If we stand in the way of African liberation, even if it's an African who is important to the process of our liberation, let us say the Right Honorable Priest Isaac or the Right Honorable Priest Kailash, who has work to do, important work, and you stand in the way of that man, you can be removed by Nyabingi, and that may I say. That is what I have accepted. And that is the intention that we came together in St. Lucia for, to say, we're not going to call people names, we're not going to judge people. We're saying all righteous people come together, led by Rastafari. Yes, the Nyabingi family, the Bobo Shanti family, the African righteous family. Let us come together and we call for our own restorative justice. And then we look internally to ensure that we are not part of our own problem. And if we are, we start a process that restores us to ourselves, our clarity of mission. So that when we're in that process, and this is why the educational spaces become important too, because what do you do? I give you $1 trillion, Right Honorable Priest Isaac, as part of a restorative justice process. What do you do with it? I'm giving it to you today. What do you do today, tomorrow? We have seen people winning the lottery, and in 5 years, I mean, tens of millions. Yes, they're wiped out because of a lack of preparation. So without a vision, our people perish. So when we speak up, this is why the admiration for Rastafari must be premier in the minds of our people, because Rastafari have been preparing, not everyone prepared at the same level, but we have been preparing for the next. And so we said, on the day when Rastafari gets ready, the wicked have to move. But equally, on the day when Farah gets ready, we must be ready to move into the spaces of our own liberation and our own justice. And it's not something that is coming out of the sky. And it's not something that is going to come from the British Parliament necessarily. Now, if it comes, it is past due, way overdue. If it comes from America, then it's past due, way overdue. From France and Belgium and Germany, way overdue. But we don't have the luxury of engaging that space en masse. If you have a few people and it's their job, give that a ministry within the sovereign spaces we're creating. The ministry that pursues the reparation that is necessary to ensure the African progress. But we also have multiple opportunities to do that. Organizationally, we can set our organizations. Economically, we can engage economic activities that empowers ourselves. But we cannot be so entrenched in focusing on Europe and what they should do, because they have not done it for so long. In fact, they're engaging new ways to constantly take money out of your pocket, new ways of constantly hiding our truth from us and our children, constantly finding new ways to ensure that we have some level of incarceration, whether it is right in your own house. Or structurally, they structure the way they put structures together. You feel incarcerated. In fact, I remember speaking to some sisters recently, and these were government workers in very prestigious positions with master's degree and thing. And the sister paints up herself in so many ways and proves upon all different kind of things. And I said, my sister, how you doing? I was just blessing her up, and she said, boy, I feel tired. I said, what are you tired of? She said, boy, all this pretense, this facade that I have to keep up, people are putting on, they're making up themselves to fit in. So the boys talk about double consciousness, but we are in a triple and quadruple consciousness, because we're coming out of the Caribbean as one level of consciousness. If you're from the Caribbean into Europe, you have to engage those two minds. You have to talk like them, but you want to be a Caribbean person. Then you're African black beauty, and you have to dissect what that means. And then when you go into a corporate world, and even though you want to relax and show your natural hair, the sister said, I want to stop this perming. I said, well, just stop. She said, no, but they have to keep up with appearances. And so few will step into these spaces proud and black and tall and dignified. But most are putting on the facades of European identity in some ways. A little tint here and here, a little coloring of this, a little. And remember, it has now become normal for young people to do what they're doing. And so you have these conversations, they say, but everybody's doing it. And they say, yes, I know, but that's why you are who you are. You're not everybody. Leadership don't do what the common man does. And that is pivoting toward Rastafari. But nonetheless, African righteous people cannot do what everyone does, because most people are not dealing in righteousness. Most people are dealing with some level of folly that will deceive people, that will rob people, that will, enrich themselves first and alone. Because it's good to enrich yourself. My goodness, we need the resources, especially when you're a good man or a good woman. The resources are good because you're going to do goodness with it. But you cannot be, after you enrich yourself, you put structures in place now to undermine the possibilities for others to be enriched. So that is malicious and evil. Yeah, so, within the justice and healing construction of ideas and then reality, the activation of that, we've been very intentional, right, Honorable Priest Isaac, to look at ourselves, to say to ourselves, even as we call for the systematic end of the symbols and personnel who are maintaining these systems of injustice, we also are saying very intentionally, if I have wounded any souls, if I have been the cause of trauma for my brother, or for myself, for my parent, for my community, forgive I, my Lord. And then let us now come and find a way that we can move, function, coexist, build, work together for a bright future. And that may engage people that don't look like us, but it's led by us because it's our idea, a Philistine thing. It's about us. Yes? Yeah. And we must, and that is a difference, because it's not, we're not saying move away from the systems of economics and things. We're saying they are unjust. We have something that is going to give you coconut water, give you your healthy foods, give you education, but it is flavored by justice, yes, by goodness. The intentions are better. It is helping you organize ideas that makes your possibilities endless. We're not trying to create a labor force. Enough people are lazy that they won't want to aspire for higher education. So we don't have to put stumbling blocks in the ways of young people to say, well, if everybody got an education, then where would our labor force be? No, it's okay. You will have a labor force because it's there. Some people, that's all they want to do. Work 8 hours and then go home. Some people work 14 hours trying to build something. Yes? Yeah. Organizing something. So we will create, and we are creating these processes for ourselves, and that is where our justice initiative is. So do we demand reparative justice and reparations from Europe? We're not going to demand it. We deserve it. We are commanding it, but we're not pursuing it in the ways that eats up our time and our resources, because we are spiritual beings having this physical experience. And when we know ourselves sufficiently, we will just utter the word and happen.
Eat up your time.
Yes,
True,
And
my lord.
on that, my lord, just to, because what we find, we have a lot of people, good people, engage in social media spaces and having these big, lengthy conversations. Not real, and they feel empowered by it, But it really is going nowhere fast. It's better utilize, and people, they'll see something posted by Raswin and they feel so irritated that they have to spend an hour just to write something to respond. Use that hour and read a book that tells you what kind of plant you can use in your garden to help yourself. By the way, that's what I've been doing within the tutelage of the Right Honorable Priest Gaelish. He's a city man. Grew up in the city. I don't know nothing about farming. So when the Honorable Priest says, learn about stinging nettle, it's good for you as a man. You need it for, I am engaged in that process. I'm saying to all people then, let us not waste time with conversations and people who are not worthy of our time and resources. That time can be better utilized empowering ourselves with information that takes the battlefield in the new direction that we want, which is self-preservation, self-elevation, and our sovereign activation. So we have to get engaged in those spaces. Otherwise, all we're going to do, we're going to be confronted. Remember, on the racial side, we're seen by others in a particular way that is not going to change. And you can't do nothing to change that. You can't pass no law that changes that. All the laws that's supposed to talk about whether or not the races are equal and justice, they don't mean anything. See January 6th last year.
Yes,
they
yes.
don't mean anything. Right? They really don't mean anything. And you have groups of people, and I don't mind those groups, Honorable. I don't mind them because at least they're honest. But I don't mind our people and politicians and policymakers who comes with the smile and the pat on your back while they're stabbing you deeply. And we have seen it across the multiple spaces. Yes? So our people need to spend time on self-development and a mission that unites their families, extend that into community spaces, like we're doing in the Ubuntu Rastafari Cultural Center, and say, this is what is important. This is how we see this issue as an important issue. What do you think? And many times you'll find the family give you their input, and then together we can collaborate and design what project we want to engage in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Make it in that increment. When we done build a mountain, people will say, wow. And I'll tell you, even the proof of concept for while it is not new, in the spaces we came into St. Lucia and did our work, people still marveling and say, but how you do it? I said, I didn't do it alone. I had a team of people, like-minded people, who saw the vision and made input into the framing of that vision. And every time there was a problem, and there were many, Honorable Priest Isaac, many, many problems, but every time there was a problem, members of the team, if I got too excited, someone would say, just calm down, man. That is going to take care of itself tomorrow. I said, but it's okay. It's okay. Yes, you'll see. And I said, but because we come from that socialization that we start panic and we start fight, and no, certain things, especially when you empower goodness from intention to action, and something comes at you, sometimes you step away a little from it and then make the forces that you are already spiritually engaged in act in your justice. So we have to understand these things, that while we empower the change, our empowerment is both physical and spiritual. Yes? And we have to make the spirit of goodness from within do the work for us that we cannot do on the physical side. Honorable God.
Yes, my Lord. Wow, give thanks for that strength. Well, my good brother, even before you go, we have to leave some links. When we come again too, we must speak of the maritime initiative. As you spoke of the works taking place in St. Lucia, that previous time we would have met up in that land. Of course, that is a whole process that is definitely moving. I don't know if you want to say a short thing about it now before we gather again, and when you're ready for that aspect of it, because I know things are happening behind the scenes as it relates to putting ships on the water then, basically, so that we as a people. So as you said, it's not just talking. Yeah, we had a nice discussion here, but things are happening. So ships should be going up and down the Carry so far beyond where we belong. Ships should be going back and forward to the motherland. People as well should be moving and cultures being exchanged and cultures reuniting again. So you want to just give us a quick thing on what's going on behind the curtains as it relates to the maritime initiative?
Yes,
What you can say?
yeah, man, as much as I can say, what I'd love to say to the family is that first, I celebrate the Right Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, 135 years since his birth, but the vision that he empowers in our current reality has allowed for many ones, to engage the talk on the Black Star Liner and what he did and the greatness of that. And that has sown the seeds of inspiration to us right now coming forward from our 20 Days of Justice and Healing initiative. And we're looking at ways in which we empower transportation, food security, interaction, cultural and economic exchanges between ourselves in our region, starting in St. Lucia and the Eastern Caribbean region and expanding beyond that. And we're doing the due diligence. We're being very deliberate. We are also being, we have the urgency of now, but we have so much examples to pull from. So we're pulling all the right examples together, the right business structure together. We're looking at the right team of ones who are not just inspired by the possibility of what that means economically or culturally or socially or politically, but ones who have the full sum, the full spectrum of those things in mind, activated, so that everything is working in tandem. The good thing about this Right Honorable Pre-Science is that we don't have to be rushed. Yes, we have a fierce urgency of now, as Brother Martin said. So we're acting now,
yes,
but we're acting very diligently, very deliberately.
Take your time and walk fast.
Yes. Yeah. So we're looking out for the stumbling blocks, the stones, the pebbles, the boulders, whatever they are, because we know they're coming. But what we have, at least from the Right Honorable Marcus Garvey's work, we have over 100 years of disciplined work that he has laid forward. So we see some stumbling blocks, some things, and we're watching our own self because we can be that stumbling block. So we're doing some work, and we're going to unpack that and present that to the public. We also, as just a point of contact, we have a program every Monday on Calabash TV in St. Lucia, Justice and Healing. It also showcases on YouTube, Justice and Healing. On Facebook also, Justice and Healing. So, you know, we're doing the conversations that unpack some of the work in terms of preparation, because the preparation is both physical, it's spiritual. We have to get into our head, cerebral. We have to really change somehow how we think, because our actions are tainted by our thoughts, or influenced, if not tainted, because tainted is the lower side of the spectrum. But it's very much influenced by our thoughts. So if our thoughts not right, if we don't have it right in our head, the activation is not going to be right. In fact, the physical activation. So we're having these conversations then to say to the family, here is a small increment, because the big picture might overwhelm most of us. Sometimes even those who are leading, my Lord, they get up and say, why? I tell you. But then you get right to the task. But some people say, boy, I may tell you, and they run from it.
Yeah.
Take a break. Yes, then they go school, or them they go work, or them go somewhere. Them, yes, and some people just cap right out. They're done.
It's true.
Done. So what we're seeking to do, especially through the Ubuntu Rastafari Cultural Center, St. Lucia, and the Ubuntu movement, is to ensure that we create an incremental process that engages the conversations, that engages some physical activities, proof of capacity and capability. Yes, so when we bring a team of 5 or 10 or 7 people, 11, 12, 13 people together, and we say, all right, here's what we're doing. This is what your responsibility is, and you say this is, you have 3 to 6 months, and you see the delivery, then you know the capacity, you know the capability, you know the commitment, and you can go to something else because you have proof of all of those things. So our process is very strategic and incremental, but we're acting now. We're in the moment, and so we're getting things done, and we're feeling, you know, when the Lord look at after 6 days his creation and he said, boy, it was good. Goodness is the baseline for us. So I accept that I is good, the work is good, and it's a lot of work. So it, you know, what we have done is so small on the spectrum of what we must do that it will be missed by a lot of people, because they look and they say, but not start. But it's a lot has been started. So not done, but it's a lot has been done.
Yes.
But what people don't understand is that the qualitative work, if it's even as small as the eye of a needle or the base of a needle, qualitatively, it is the same as the mountain you look at. And I generally use the analogy to say, if I'm just like a drop of water, but I am water. And if you go to the ocean or the great rivers, you see water. Qualitatively, I have the same components of that water. But you would look at me and say, boy, it is nothing in the spectrum of the vastness of those things. But still I am. Still I am alive. Still I am doing the same thing that ocean does, but my waves, you don't even see the ripple of my waves. Don't mean it's not there. It is there. Yeah. But it is when I collectively come now, and that is what I allude to in the power of the collective voice and the African drum, calling for an end to the symbols of oppression and the people and the structures. That when we see movements, we better say, give thanks to our ancestors and to ourselves and to the divine within us, because now there's the possibility for new and the next. Yes, let us pray that those people who take the mantle of power, wherever they do it, and especially in the moment, let us pray that based on their socialization, even amongst Rastafari and African good people, that they'll do the right things. Because if they don't, mark my word, right, Honorable Priest Isaac, the justice and the judgment is going to catch up with them in short order. It won't take as much time, because now is the time where our salvation is brought to I and I, by I and I, through our own will and that of the divine within I and I. So give thanks, Honorable God.
Well, then people are taking power. They themselves come and beat the drum, you know, so.
That's the point.
Don't run up and...
No, that's the point, you know. I remember that is a weapon within our knowledge of weaponry. And so when you engage my weapon, that weapon can be turned in some way. So I am praying that through divine will and powers that is within us, and that we extend in creation, that these people do the right things. Because it is not I and I will that all or any should perish.
True.
But all can come to salvation.
Of course.
So that's yes, my Lord.
Yes, ma'am. So those links that you were giving. So if anyone wants to contact you personally, say someone say, hey, man, I want to talk to the good Dr. Raswayne Rose, or to catch any of the programs taking place, or even the initiative. You have any? Well, you just gave some links, you know, for the television program, but any other links, or you want to repeat those so we could keep them and put them up as well?
Give thanks, Honorable. So for the television program, again, it's Justice and Healing on Calabash TV. And there is a Justice and Healing Facebook and Justice and Healing YouTube through Calabash TV. But the Ubuntu Rastafari Cultural Center, importantly, has a website called justiceandhealing.com. It speaks to the initiative. It's being updated right now because we're post the initiative, but we're still in the process of our own healing. And our justice has to be so vast that it can't be stopped after 28 days, you know. The next century, we are asserting our justice. you know, and then so we can be contacted also on email at JAHNI, that's NI for Nyabinghi Initiative, Jaja. So it's Justice and Healing, Judgment and Heaping, Nyabinghi Initiative. So it's JAHNI21@gmail.com. And I certainly will respond to any links on that. Also, we have a WhatsApp number, which is 758-287-0637. Again, that's 758-287-0637. And those are mechanisms through which I can be contacted directly. Of course, you know, we have our own links, and when we get more intimate with the family, you, of course, my beloved brother, I will have those links and share. But yes, it's waros3@morgan.edu is another email. That's waros3@morgan.edu. So yes, Honorable.
Okay, that's right. In those done. Yes, my Lord, give thanks then. I will share this again with the family even before I myself seal off. I give thanks again. You know, we give thanks for Dr. Wayne Rose coming and sitting with us. Pan-African consciousness, race, restorative justice and healing. I think we would have covered a lot this evening. It should have been a nutritious meal, man, for anyone who was sitting at the table with us. And we give thanks for the strength, of course. At least in the Tiger's Nest, we will be doing this again. Of course, I for sure will be joining you, you know, on justice and healing, you know, as a part of that initiative, you know, from time to time as well. So give thanks, my Lord, for accompanying us this evening. I will assist you on your way out if you have any last few words. If not, give thanks, my Lord. Blessed love.
Give thanks, Honorable. Blessed love, and just love to the family and guidance and goodness. Rastafari.
Rastafari. Give thanks, my Lord. Blessed Lord. Oh, yes, that was wonderful. And we give thanks for the good brother that is Brother Ras Wayne Rose, and of course, the strength that he basically gave to us there. Yes, mighty, mighty, mighty strength. All right, wonderful family. So, you know, really, just putting this aside here, definitely give thanks for that strength. Of course, again, if one wants to contact the good brother, one can definitely give him a link. Of course, again, the WhatsApp that he gave is area code 758. That's area code 758, and then you have 287-0636, 287-0636. And of course, we're talking about justiceandhealing.com. You can check that out, justiceandhealing.com for sure. And of course, you can check the Facebook page and of course the YouTube page as well. Wonderful. All right, my family, definitely giving thanks as well. Also, what else he has here? Yes, I think that was the information he gave to us. But it was a wonderful discussion, a wonderful reason with the good brother, Dr. Wayne Rose, and of course, speaking about African consciousness on a whole. Definitely giving thanks, of course, family. Yes, remember for sure, we're talking about the International Homeschool Program. Make sure you get the young ones involved in such, even at this time, whether it's African history, whether it's biology, or whether it is their astronomy. This is something that will definitely take them to another level. Make sure you bring in the young ones. You know what to do. Just contact us and we'll give you all the information. Listen, so many things happening, but I'm going to touch you on another level. You know, I'm just going to go and bask in all the knowledge and information that I just received from the good brother Ras Wade Rose. Give thanks, family, for the life giver and the keeper of life, love and happiness, and joy and righteousness. Holy Emmanuel I, Selassie I, Jah Rastafari I. Blessed Lord.